Hello everyone and welcome to the 7th episode of Popular Decks. I'm your host Michael, and as with every week, I'll be running a recent 5-0 deck through an MTGO league. Last week I asked you guys to vote for decks containing some of the new cards from Modern Masters 2017, and Bug Tron with Dinrova Horror won. Before we get to the deck, just a reminder to you guys to leave any feedback you have for me about my videos in the comments section below. I'm always trying to improve my content and would love to get some advice if you have any. Another reminder is that under every video I put the deck list in the description as well as the straw poll for you to vote for which deck I'll play next week. I'm also going to include a link to my Twitter feed in the description as well. I'm Mikey Ruru on there just like everywhere else, remember with zeros instead of O's. I don't post very often, but I'm going to send out a tweet for every video that I release, and I'm also thinking I'm going to be starting streaming soon, so I'll send out a tweet anytime that I go live on Twitch. As long as my internet and computer can handle it, I'll be doing that, so that should be fun. Last but not least, if you want to see more content like this, hit the subscribe button so that YouTube will let you know when I post new videos. Now let's move on to the deck. This week I'll be playing Leroy B's Bug Tron deck. Leroy B beat me with my Stompy deck on the way to 5-0 last week, so that was pretty scary because Tron is typically not supposed to be very good against Stompy, and I got absolutely destroyed. So let's see what we've got here. So we've got kind of a typical land base for a Tron deck. It's got all 12 Tron lands, a couple islands, and then we have some Thornwood Falls instead of the typical Izzet lands because we're not playing any red spells. We got one Bojuka Bog, which is kind of a nice target for crop rotation and expedition map, and it also helps us cast Dinrova Horror, so it's okay. So nothing too crazy in the land base. We've got 2 crop rotation and 2 expedition map. I kind of like this because teachings for crop rotation actually is a realistic way to get to Tron sometimes. So it's kind of cool to have crop rotation in your teachings Tron deck. Then we've got a couple counter spells. We've got 2 prohibit, 2 exclude. Prohibit only counters small spells if you don't know what that card does. Exclude is for creature spells, and then condescend can hit anything as long as we have a lot of mana. We've got 2 or 4 prophetic prisms and then 1 Dimir signet for some artifact fixing. That's pretty standard. I've seen a lot of Marasatron lists running 1 Izzet signet, so we've got 1 Dimir signet. In order to stay alive with this deck, we've got 3 copies of Moment's Peace to fog our attackers, as well as some Seagate Oracles to block and draw cards. And then for our card advantage spells, we've got 2 Forbidden Alchemy, 2 Mystical Teachings, and then we've got 2 Mnemonic Walls and 4 Muldrifters, which is a pretty standard package in a Marasatron style deck. So we have a lot of similarities to Marasatron with a little bit more focus on the green stuff. And then we've got Dinrova Horror to top it all off. So for those of you who don't know what this card does, it's 6 mana for a 4/4. When it comes into play, you basically capsize a permanent. Well, I forget the name of that spell, but you capsize a permanent and they have to discard a card. Man, I can't remember the name of the spell, but there's a spell that does this for a colorless, a blue, and a black, and this is just that with a big body. And the important part about it is that you can Ghostly Flicker, Mnemonic Wall, and Dinrova Horror to... Mnemonic Wall gets back the Ghostly Flicker, and Dinrova Horror just puts all their permanents back into their hand, and then they have to discard a card every time. And they run out of cards and permanents, and you basically lock them out of the game completely. They'll have no lands left, and they end up with basically nothing. So I believe I've mentioned all the cards in the deck. Yeah, I mentioned the Ghostly Flicker. You can either use it for value, like with a Muldrifter, or you can combo with Mnemonic Wall and Dinrova Horror. Okay, that's all the cards in the main deck. Let's move on to the sideboard. So we've got a Radiant Fountain, which is awesome with crop rotation and expedition map. You can grab it against burn or whatever. We've got 3 Dispel and 2 Hydroblast for just counterspell matchups for the Dispel, and then the Hydroblast for the red decks, obviously. Got 2 Electrickery, great against Delver, Boggles, the usual, the token decks. 1 more crop rotation. I think this is for... I actually don't really know when we're supposed to bring this in, and my guess would be against like land destruction type decks. Be pretty nice to sacrifice the land they're targeting and grab a new one. Got a Ray of Revelation. I'm not sure if this is better than like Serene Heart, but I assume it's for Boggles. I don't really know what other decks I would want it against. Maybe Someone's got some enchantment control deck. I don't know. I usually don't like to bring this sort of card in against Curse of the Bloody Tome decks, so I don't know exactly what it's in there for. But we got Ancient Grudge for the artifact decks. We've got a Probe for the control matchups. Probe's pretty brutal. You get to Sift, I believe, is the card. You draw 3 and discard 2, and your opponent has to discard 2 more if you kick it. So it's 5 mana for like 3 or 4 for 1, depending on what you're discarding, if you're discarding garbage. We got one more Fog, and we got one more Pulse of Marasa, I assume also for matchups where our lands are dying, or if we just have some bad cards in the matchup. You can always bring in the Pulse, because it can get back a Muldrifter or whatever. So that's pretty much it. I'm going to remind you guys again, vote for next week's deck in the poll below, and check out the other links if you want to see the deck list and stuff like that. And without any further ado, let's get on to the matches.